Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm your host, Melissa Melton, and let's check out what's coming up on this Wednesday, February 27, 2013 edition.
Tonight, spam bots invade Congress as Obamanites flood congressional Twitter accounts and fraudulent anti-gun messages. Then, the DHS plans to release 10,000 illegal aliens from detention centers. And Catherine Albrecht, in studio, exposes the RFID privacy nightmare. That's up next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
I just want to start tonight's broadcast off by saying that we here at InfoWars, we take a lot of flack, and a lot of times we're called names like crazy conspiracy theorist. But even if you try to look at this from a skeptic's point of view, the things that our government is engaged in at this time is just completely insane. It makes no sense. It throws logic completely out the window. I mean, let's take a look at this first story. DHS to release 10,000 illegals while building new detention centers. Okay, so the Department of Homeland Security plans to release 10,000 illegal aliens from detention centers in response to possible sequestration budget cuts, citing the unaffordability of maintaining these jails, while simultaneously building new detention centers for illegal aliens that cost tens of millions of dollars, I guess so that they can also not be afforded to be maintained? Doesn't make any sense at all. And actually, they've already started releasing illegal immigrants ahead of the budget cuts even going into effect. And Napolitano is saying she doesn't think we can maintain, we being her and her ilk, the same level of security at all places around the country with sequester as without sequester. And I'm actually really hoping that what that means is they're not going to be able to afford to stick their hands down the pants of as many 3-year-olds at the airport who just want to go to Disneyland, because we all know they're not doing anything at the border anyway. And there she is. Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, that is wonderful. I love that. That's pretty accurate, actually, and it's unfortunate and sad. They're releasing people from one end of the spectrum while they're building more facilities, which they're not going to apparently be able to afford to put people in. It makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. And for more on how Queen Napolitano is basically, ironically, using these terroristic threats, their veiled threats, against the American people in the wake of budget cuts, let's go now to Aaron Dykes.
Under sequestration, immigration, and customs enforcement, also part of DHS, will be forced to reduce detention and removal. Perhaps most critically, it would have serious consequences to the flow of trade and travel.
So the sequestration budget cuts are here, a measly $85 billion of automatic cuts because they couldn't agree on real budget cuts that will basically do nothing to the American budget. And yet in the news, we have Janet Napolitano, head of Homeland Security, openly making threats that if they dare touch her precious Homeland Security budget, there might be new terror attacks or there might be a new wave of immigrants illegally flooding across the border. Let's play a short clip of that right now.
Look, I don't think we can maintain the same level of security at all places around the country with sequester as without sequester. Threats from terrorism and the need to respond and recover from natural disasters do not diminish because of budget cuts.
Let's just call it for what it is. It's a veiled threat. It is terrorism, and we know who the real terrorists are. We've seen countless false flag events from 9/11 on down, from the phony underwear bomber scenario used to sell body scanners to the public, and of course, the setting up of Homeland Security itself to terrorize the people. We know what it is. The dictionary definition of terrorism is the systematic use of fear or terror as a means of coercion, and that's just what they're doing. And of course, Janet Napolitano says she's not trying to scare anyone. She just wants them to plan for what if there's not enough money for TSA to grow passengers, and what to do if there's longer lines and you have to wait to get on a plane, or if you're not able to make your flight.
Average wait times to clear customs will increase by as much as 50%, and at our busiest airports like Newark and JFK, LAX and O'Hare, peak wait times, which can reach over 2 hours, could easily grow to 4 hours.
Homeland Security and other national security figures, Napolitano on down, don't want the public to even think that these national security apparatuses can be targeted by budget cuts. So that's why they want to reiterate the fear. They admittedly did it during the Bush administration using their color-coded fear chart every time Bush was down in the polls, or that he faced re-election, or that the public was beginning to doubt that the war on terror was real. Now we see it again, as we already have in the Obama administration. The fear-mongering over checks won't go out, people are going to starve, people are going to go hungry. And then here's Napolitano adding on to that the country will break down and passengers will have to wait in lines, and the TSA won't be able to do its job, and it's not our fault if there's more terror attacks. Well, we know who's clearly behind the staged phony terror in this country. We also know that Homeland Security and TSA have never caught a real terrorist, especially at airports, and that the only terrorists they have set up in charge are those led by admitted FBI sting operations. But Napolitano wants you to think that her precious Homeland Security budget is untouchable and that they have a right to occupy and control the direction of this country. Of course, Homeland Security's real money comes through black budgets and is used for continuity of government operations, setting up of FEMA camps, and a lot more. No one's even pretending to touch that money.
Under sequestration, Immigration and Customs Enforcement would not be able to maintain the 34,000 detention beds as required by Congress. It would also reduce our investigative activities in areas like human smuggling.
They want you to be afraid of a wave of illegal immigration, even though they're admittedly planning to give amnesty to more than 11 million immigrants and pretty much openly don't do anything to restrict the border. In fact, Department of Justice and others give weapons to the drug cartels, allow them to ship in their drugs and then launder the money on Wall Street. They just want to, again, control and instill fear in the American public. They're not going to do anything to stop illegal immigration one way or another, and they're certainly not going to stop terrorism, which they could just use to further their own agenda. We see through you, Janet Napolitano. We know that your odor comes from a defensive mechanism like a skunk or like a stink beetle to keep people away from your little precious jewel agency of Homeland Security. So they'll think they can't cut your budget, and you'll just excrete this defensive odor upon the people. Well, stop it. You're repugnant. You're repugnant to the Constitution. Get away from our Bill of Rights. Stop using it as your toilet paper. Signing off for Infowars.com, I'm Aaron Dykes.
Hi, I'm Janet Napolitano, Secretary of Homeland Security. If you try to take our money that is rightfully ours, we will unleash a legion of terrorists on you, because we need our money to put our hands down your pants and create terror alerts and do all kinds of things to take away your freedoms, and to pay for targets that look like pregnant women and old men defending their homes. Those are the real terrorists.
Janet Napolitano, just take my money, please. Please, I'm so scared. Please, take my money. Come on, seriously, this is ridiculous. Anyway, moving on. Texas public school students are donning burqas and learning that Muslim terrorists are freedom fighters now. So that's a new wonderful thing that's happening here in the Texas public schools. A teacher has allegedly encouraged the schoolgirls to dress in full-length Islamic burqas and then instruct the entire class that Muslim terrorists are actually freedom fighters. And the teacher even allegedly said she doesn't agree with it, but she's supposed to teach people that they're not supposed to call them terrorists, they're freedom fighters. And at the end of the class, a teacher assigned a paper about Egypt, and a student explained to reporters the topic of the paper was how Egypt was a good country until democracy took over, and that things were finally corrected when the Muslim Brotherhood came into power. So is this teacher teaching students to think critically, or is this more PC brainwashing? I mean, we're the ones that put the Muslim Brotherhood into power, and now we have this brainwashing arm for our children that's telling them to think that that's good? This makes, again, no sense. And moving on to things that make absolutely no sense, let's take a look at this. Eyewitness, yes, the Nazis did confiscate our guns. So this is an eyewitness, an Austrian citizen, Kitty Werthmann, who was actually there when Hitler was the annexation of Austria, and she says she actually saw them taking away citizens' guns, and yet all these gun control advocates and all these mainstream media people are trying to rewrite history and say that never happened.
Oh, the Austrian people they all had guns, but the government said the guns are very dangerous. Children are playing with guns, hunting accidents happen, and we really have to have total control, safety. So we dutifully went to the police station and we registered our guns. Not long after, they said, no, it didn't help. The only way that we don't have accidents and crimes, you bring the guns to the police station, and then We don't have any crimes anymore and any accidents. And if you don't do that, capital punishment.
So there you have it. Stalin and Hitler disarmed their political adversaries before engaging in mass genocide.
See, and that woman wasn't Jewish, she was Austrian, and they took her guns. She was actually there, she witnessed it. And now we have all these mainstream media outlets coming out like Salon.com publishing stuff like this. The Hitler gun control lie. And these stories are ridiculous. It's amazing. Actually, it says the notion that Hitler confiscated everyone's guns is mostly bogus. Well, mostly bogus means partly true. Then they go on to say the law did prohibit Jews and other persecuted classes from owning guns, but this should not be an indictment of gun control in general. I'm pretty sure it should, because if you're Jewish and you get your guns taken away and then millions of you are slaughtered in mass, that's a pretty good argument against gun control. But my favorite line, I think, is if guns don't kill people, because of the argument, guns don't kill people, people kill people, then neither does gun control cause genocide. Genocidal regimes cause genocide. Well, I would argue that we're living under a genocidal regime because we're killing thousands every day through Planned Parenthood, which our government gives millions to every day. And that was started by a known eugenicist who on record wanted to do away with minorities, with the low-income impoverished, with feeble-minded people. She said on record she wanted people to have to apply to the government to become parents anyways, and we even see that today. Planned Parenthoods are mostly located in low-income, high-minority neighborhoods. And when we're not killing people here, we're actually doing it in other countries in these unconstitutional wars, or we'll just send a drone over and like bomb a whole wedding, or bomb an apartment building and kill a bunch of people. And I just think it's amazing that we live in a time where we're surrounded by such evil that we have these media outlets openly standing up for Adolf Hitler. It's amazing to me. And I think the point of stories like this is so that people won't make that connection between Adolf Hitler, who was a cult of personality back in his day. After the false flag Reichstag event, he passed an enabling act and became a dictator. And he was a horrible, authoritative dictator that killed millions of people. And now today we have cult of personality Obama passing all of his unconstitutional executive orders and the NDAA, where he can indefinitely detain U.S. citizens without even a charge or a trial. I think that the mainstream media just doesn't want you to know that history repeats itself. Well, it's going to continue to repeat itself, whether or not Salon likes it or not. And actually, I think that people like Alex Seitzwald and Salon need to stop misdirecting people with partial bits of truth, because were you there? No, you weren't. But Kitty Worthman was, and she said it happened, okay?
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.